Blog Talk Radio.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Coffee Chat with Camille. Today, my guest is Ronald Kimmons. He's an author, and he's on the line now. So I do want to go ahead and let him in, and then I'll finish up. I'll give the introduction afterwards, but in more detail. But his name is Ronald Kimmons, and he's an independent fantasy novelist. Okay? So I want to go ahead and get started with the interview for you folks. All right. Here. And here. Hello, Ronald.
Hello, Camille. Hi, Camille.
How are
Thanks
you?
for having me.
Yes, it's
Fabulous.
a pleasure having you. The title of our show today is What is Magic in Mind? The Value of Fantasy Storytelling in Modern Society. And so I just want to go ahead and get started with getting questions answered for the audience.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
How has your career path as a content writer, translator, and marketing agency owner prepared you to become a novelist?
So, I mean, as you can tell, there's a lot of writing involved in copywriting. I've wrote a lot of website content, marketing content, and of course, a lot of writing involved in translation, which I did for several years. And in my marketing agency, I've done that together with my wife, and the aspect of the agency that I really focused on was the writing aspect of it, right? A lot of sales copy, a lot of marketing emails and things like that. So I've been just through all the things that I've done. I've been doing a lot of writing. Not the same kind of writing, but it's been writing, and it has really helped to build that skill set. And also, as an entrepreneur, you have to be creative as an entrepreneur. Established way of doing things. You're not really in the safe haven. You're going out on your own, and that's of course a very different kind of creativity from being a fantasy novelist. Mm-hmm. But there's still a lot of there, a lot of independence of the mind that requires you to be both go and find new things and consider new things, but also maintain a high level of discipline so that you can actually accomplish things, right? And so I think in all those ways, that those things have all prepared me to do what I'm doing now.
Okay, wonderful. And then why do you think that literary agents and publishers are no longer necessary?
You can certainly go that route. But with all of the resources that we have now, when you're an independent person, a novelist can go build their own website, go build their own social media following, build their own email lists, and get the name out there themselves. And they also have resources like Amazon and other publishers that are print on demand, and that and also digital publishing and everything. The need for traditional publishers really isn't there so much. And of course, they do have a lot of reach. They do have a lot of resources. If a traditional publisher wants to publish a book and they want to invest a whole lot into marketing it and putting it out there in bookstores and great numbers and everything, then that may be great. But for most authors, even if they go through traditional publishing, that's not going to happen. The publisher is not going to most books don't succeed, and one reason is that the publishers have to pick their winners, right? And they tend to focus on the ones that they think that are really going to sell, and that's what they invest in. And also, even when you work with the publisher, with an agent and everything, you're still going to be expected to do a whole lot of marketing. Even though that's supposedly what they bring to the table, you're still going to have to be doing a lot of it. They still expect you to do a lot of it. And so knowing that, and knowing the fact that I come from a marketing background, and also knowing that, that it takes a lot of work just to get considered by publishers and agents. You have to do a whole lot, hundreds of submissions to get someone to actually take interest in your work. Most of the time, considering all that, my mind, my thought process was, well, I'll just take all that energy and put it towards doing it myself. And that's what I'm doing, and I'm enjoying it. It's been an adventure so far.
Excellent, thank you. And how would you like to see your stories change the people who read them?
I think what I like to like my favorite novelist is actually Dostoevsky. I love Dostoevsky because on the one hand, he doesn't seem to have any about people.
Hey, excuse me, Ronald?
Yes.
Oh, for some
Hello?
reason the sound, yes.
Okay.
The sound is going a little, there we go. Sounds much better. That's okay.
Okay. So Dostoevsky, he has no delusions about people. You see in his characters, he sees that people can often be vile and ridiculous and irrational, but you can still also see that despite all of that, he loves people. He has this very deep love for people, and also he can see. When you read Dostoevsky, you see that the world is painted in a very dreary light, but at the same time, despite all of that, he always communicates a message of hope. And I would like to see people get that from my writing, even though my subject matter and my style are both very different from Dostoevsky. But I would hope that same effect that Dostoevsky has on me would be seen in my readers, that they would come to have a certain hope and also love for humanity, and that they would experience that through my writing.
Well, that's wonderful. And then which authors have inspired you and influenced you the most?
Yeah, Dostoevsky, definitely. Dostoevsky.
Yes.
And also Milton. I think my favorite literary work in any language, I think, is Milton. Is Paradise Lost. It's just phenomenal. There's so many intricacies of it. And I keep reading it over and over. In fact, I like to listen to it. That's one that I listen to on audiobook a lot. But I keep going through it over and over because there's so many intricacies of it, and I love his portrayal of the devil, of evil, and the relevance that has to us as humans. Just his general philosophy is very powerful to me. Some others that have influenced me. Going back to when I was younger, my mother was a big fan of, and still is a big fan of science fiction, fantasy, and she had a lot of Star Wars books. And there are lots of Star Wars books, a lot of authors that contributed to that shared universe, and that is something that really influenced me when I was young. I would read those books that she had, and I liked them a lot, and that definitely had a big influence on me. I don't really read Star Wars so much now, but it back in the day it definitely had a big influence on me.
Wonderful. And then can you name some famous authors that you dislike?
Oh, Mark Twain. Mark Twain just gets under my skin. I see value in what he wrote. Like he was very progressive for his age, and I think that he had a positive influence on people's perspectives on slavery and racism and things like that. But his his general style just really annoys me, and I see him as a very cynical person who just didn't like people, and that kind of bothers me when I read Mark Twain. That's the main one that comes to mind as far as famous authors. There have been others, we think.
Yes.
I tend to like pretty much everyone to some extent, but Mark Twain really. Another one is what's his name? He wrote his name completely escapes me right now. He's a French writer, very famous. It's ridiculous that I can't remember his name. He wrote Candide. Anyway, totally slipped my mind. But anyway, he kind of annoys me in the same way. I see him as a cynic, and who didn't like people, and that bothers me. I think any author that just doesn't really like people, to me that comes across. Voltaire. Yeah, I could totally escape me from it. Any author that doesn't really like people, and when I'm reading his book, it kind of bothers me. And I like to read authors that like people, even if they recognize that people are kind of ridiculous sometimes.
Yes, got it. Okay, and then what makes your writing style unique?
My writing style, I something that definitely comes through in my novel that's coming out in January, Wild River, is it's just very fast paced. I don't really go into a whole lot of exposition, which is a big temptation for fantasy writers, right? Because we create this whole world, and the initial impulse of a fantasy writer is to start the first chapter just kind of giving the whole history of this world that we created and we're so proud of, right? But readers don't like to read that. Readers want to get into the action, and that's what I do I think a lot, and I also don't dwell too much on trying to tell my readers what's going on in my characters' minds. I try to show it kind of briefly, if ambiguously, through dialogue and through the things that they do. I don't really go on for pages and pages talking about what they're thinking about. I do it to some extent, but not a whole lot. And as I wrote Wild River, for the most part I was trying to make every chapter almost like a story in itself, very episodic.
Yes.
So that it pulls you in, gives you something in the beginning of the chapter that grabs your attention, and then at the end of the chapter it kind of sums something up. Something has been resolved, but then usually something else is placed there at the end of the chapter and makes you go, whoa, wait a second, what's going on? And then I move on to something to the new chapter.
Yes. And then, thank you. And then, as a scientifically minded Christian, how do you approach hard questions like evolution and theodicy?
So these are things that I've written about a lot, and that I want to write books about in the future. I think that what people need to understand is that having a religious belief doesn't mean that you have to know everything from the beginning. Yes. And sometimes you can know something is true, but make certain assumptions about the details of how it's true, and then later find out that those assumptions were wrong. But the main thing that you knew was true can still be true, just maybe not in the way that you assumed. And I think, for example, evolution is one thing there. I completely accept the scientific explanation of evolution, in where humans came from biologically. But what I would say is that there's more to it than that. There is a creator who was involved somewhere down the line, and also we're spiritual beings in a very real sense. We have spirits, not just bodies, but spirits. And And something that I want to write about in the future is how this all works out in my mind with Adam and Eve as real people who were directly created by God, but put in this world where humans already existed biologically, but they were spiritually distinct from Adam and Eve. They weren't the same kind of people spiritually. They weren't the same kind of beings spiritually, but Adam and Eve did something that caused all the humans born after that point to be spiritually distinct from the ones that had come before. In fact, in that is they're distinct in that they are the children of God. They are the children of God. Things like that. I feel that from a religious perspective, people tend to have this tendency to want to say that they have all the answers from the beginning, and that anything that makes them that challenges their perspective on things must be evil. And that's just not the case. You can know certain spiritual truths and yet still continue to learn exactly what the implications of those things are in the real world by looking to scientific fact and continuing to learn not just scientific things but spiritual things as well.
Yes. And then as a Christian, how do you approach common fantasy tropes like is that polytheism and magic?
Well, first off, I think, of course, there are many kinds of religious people, many kinds of Christians, and I have seen that there is a certain kind of type of Christian who is kind of afraid of his or her own imagination, and I think that the reason for that is that they have trouble distinguishing between their religious belief and their imagination. That scares them because it suggests to them that maybe their religious belief is just imagination. And so they tend to just not want to go indulge in speculative fiction and fantasy and science fiction that ask these questions that make them uncomfortable. But like from my perspective, I love asking these questions, and I love kind of digging up these pieces of discomfort. And for me, it's not something that bothers me because I feel that I have a good sense of what is my religious belief and what is my imagination. And so, when I read a fantasy novel or when I write a fantasy novel, I have no trouble saying, okay, I don't believe that these things are true, but it makes a good story, and it can convey certain other truths at a more subtle level. In my books, I have magic of a certain sort. But that doesn't mean that I believe in this, and I don't expect my readers to believe in it. And anyone who would start believing in that just because I put it in my book, it probably has some other problems, that I can't address. But no, I think it's a very important skill for people to learn, to be able to entertain an idea without believing it.
Yes.
Because that can help them to learn things about themselves and about the world, and to consider possibilities they wouldn't have considered before.
It's interesting. Thank you. And then how do you approach the conflict between religious conservatism and homosexuality and transgenderism?
The conflict.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well,
yes, and also, sorry, Ronald, I want to add this on. And then, do you address that in your writing?
So, in my novels, I don't really go into that so much.
Okay.
Not so much in my novels. I do have a character in my current novel. She's an important character, and she's bisexual. It's not really a really important plot point. Like I don't write LGBT fiction in the sense that is, I don't have that as like a central point of the plot. But I may have characters who just happen to be like that. Like I do have one character who is bisexual, and she's a very interesting character. She starts out bad and becomes good, but she's a very interesting character. Anyway, but the first thing that I would say, when people are discussing issues like this in our society today, there's this tendency to either to not be able to distinguish the person from the idea or the action, right? And not even talking about homosexuality or something like that, but talking more broadly about all kinds of things. People should be able to disagree with each other on moral issues without being enemies, without hating each other. Like I have a friend who thinks that the NFL is immoral because of all the history of head trauma and things like that, and so he's morally opposed to watching NFL games. But he's still friends with people who watch NFL games, and
yes.
I do sometimes, not a lot, but I'm not offended at the fact that he has moral qualms there with something that I do, and he doesn't hate me for having moral qualms and for not aligning with his moral beliefs. People will have different moral beliefs, and that intrinsically means that we believe that people will do things that are immoral, and other people will believe that we are doing things that are immoral, and that just happens. Just because you do one thing that doesn't fit within a certain person's moral belief system, that doesn't mean that they necessarily think that you're a terrible person all around, right? Humans are complex beings, and none of us are perfect.
True.
And yeah, we're going to disagree on some things. We can still be friends, and that doesn't mean that we should be patronizing, and it doesn't mean that we should pretend to be friends while secretly saying, "Oh, but that person is gay" or whatever. No, we can be friends. We can disagree on things, and to paraphrase Christ, I mean, if you can only be friends with people who agree with you on every issue, then you're not really someone who's good at making friends. We need to be able to live together and have different moral beliefs and be okay with that.
Thank you. And then what do you think the world needs most right now?
In general terms, I would say empathy, and that goes back to what I was just talking about. Even dealing with moral issues and things, but we need to have empathy even when we disagree with people. Too often, so many of our disagreements just immediately turn into name calling contests, and it's a question of how quickly someone can slap a label on someone else. Empathy, in a most general sense. In more practical terms, I would say that what I think the world needs more than anything right now is in the United States. I want to see ranked choice voting, because so many of our big problems that we have come from our corrupt and inefficient two-party system. It does not give us the representation that we should have in what is supposedly a republic or a democracy. Mm-hmm. The system that we have does not serve the people, and the only way I see of changing that is through ranked choice voting, where people are not told, "Oh, you can't vote for that third-party candidate because you'll waste your vote." In a ranked choice voting system, there is no wasting of votes. Every vote is counted, so you can vote for the person that you think is the best, and if that person can't win, that's okay. Your vote will still be counted toward the next best person that you chose, right? And if we can institute that will go a long way in helping us to break free of the hypocrisy and the corruption that is indicative of both of our major parties today.
Yes. Thank you so much. That's all the time that we actually have. So that was a very powerful note to end our interview on. And I want to thank you so very much, Ronald, for your thoughts and for being here. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it was absolutely a pleasure. Thank you. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, everyone. That was the wonderful Ronald Kimmons. And I don't know about you, but I hope that you were able to unpack all that he was saying. It was such a overall positive information or a positive message in each of the majority of his questions, his answers to his questions. And I learned a lot just listening to him. And I do want to read about Ronald in his own words before the time escapes me. He writes, from a young age, he always wanted to be a novelist. He says, I was always writing stories and daydreaming about things that could be. As an adult, I did not initially pursue this as a career because I wanted to build a family, and I thought it was not feasible economically. Instead, I wrote website content and translated documents into English from multiple foreign languages. More recently, I built a successful digital marketing agency with my wife. I think it's Alice Sion. I'm sorry if I mispronounced his wife's name. In that agency, we have helped numerous entrepreneurs to each sell millions of dollars in info products. That experience has caused me to believe that I can actually make good as an independent novelist without an agent or a publisher. I want to show others that they can bring their dreams to reality, both in the stories they want to tell and in the life that they want to build. Okay, so you can also find Ronald on Facebook and YouTube and LinkedIn, and he does have a website, which I left the link to it in the description of the show. We are at blogtalkradio.com, and then the name of our show, or my show rather, is Coffee Chat with Camille. Okay, so Ronald, you can find him at www.ronaldm, as in Mary, K as in Kim, MMONS.com. Okay, free novella. So he also leaves a free download novella that gives readers a taste of his stories and his style. Okay, and then he does have Wild River that is coming in January 2023. So at the top of the new year, he will be releasing a new book. All right. So our wonderful guest again was Ronald Kimmons, and the name of our show was What is Magic and Mind? The Value of Fantasy Storytelling in Modern Society. And again, thank you so much for listening to our show. Thank you, Ronald. It was a great episode. I really enjoyed listening to him and his perspective as a writer, an author, novelist, all that great stuff. Okay. Oh, and also Christian and his views on politics as well. So it was a lot to unpack. Such a wonderful interview. Thank you, Ronald. Thank you all for listening. Bye for now.